Guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today I want to review a book that I really enjoyed a lot. I know I enjoyed the last two books, but this one I definitely enjoyed because it's something that is kind of close to me in regards to the area I grew up in and live. I live in Hobart, Indiana, and this book is going to be about the city next door, right? This book is titled Lost Gary, Indiana by Jerry Davich. And the reason I say it's important is because growing up, I used to always see this city right here as something that used to be, had great potential, right? You go there and you see all these buildings, all this dilapidation, destruction, all these buildings that had so much character and could have been, kept up and could have been something great, right? The city could have grew into something amazing, right? And you can even see that on the cover right here, right? So, Gary is definitely something I was very interested in, and it's something I'm going to be utilizing for my thesis in college and well as my research for my dissertation, right? So what is good about this book? What is great about this book is it goes over everything. It talks about how the area of Indiana here, Northwest Indiana, used to be kind of like the unwanted, unlivable area of Indiana. It was full of swampland, etc. And what inspired the growth of Gary, inspired the city, was the steel mills, right? The steel industry. And so the steel industry is what jetted this area, and kind of attracted a lot of individuals, especially people from Eastern Europe. And what's cool about that, by the way, is my grandpa used to always call himself a honky, right? And it kind of goes over that in this book because his family, his parents came directly from Hungary, right? So it makes it very interesting, kind of thing, ties it in, makes it a little bit special for me, right? Some other things that this book goes over, it talks about, all the different amazing schools that they had here in Gary and unfortunately have been razed or closed down. It talks about all the famous people that have came from Gary, which is one of the most famous people is going to be Michael Jackson, right? And the Jackson 5, they grew up in Gary, Indiana. And other famous individuals, I don't know them off the top of my head right now, they're in the book, but you got famous football coach, famous photographer that unfortunately passed away in World War II, famous fighter, right? All sorts of great people came from this amazing city, right? And then it's going to talk about other famous buildings, like the Union train station, and it's going to talk about some controversial topics. For example, the city went downhill. They blame the white flight, right, of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And then it talks about the controversial Mayor Hatcher, which, of course, a lot of people point their finger and blame the downfall of Gary to be his fault, right? Obviously, there's a lot of factors that go and play into, the destruction of Gary, whether that's segregation, white flight, they call it, whether that's, the steel industry not doing too hot, whether that's the drug epidemic of the 80s, right, with Ronald Reagan's, the drug war, etc., right? So all sorts of great things this book tackles, and it's a very light read too. There's not too much, it's very spaced out, and there's not too many pages. There's only like 120 something pages in here. And also one thing I wanted to point out too in this book is there are some awesome pictures in here, right? And for example, right here you can see picture back in the day, picture now, right? All these great buildings, look at them. Even on the cover right here, right? So I don't know too much about the author. I do know, or I do believe he is either a journalist or a famous writer, or writer for the newspaper, I believe. I haven't looked into him too much, but he did a great job, of course, which makes sense if that is his actual profession outside of being an author, right? So definitely a good read. And I definitely recommend it if you are curious about our great city of Gary, Indiana. And there's still hope for Gary, Indiana, and he touches on that slightly here as well. He also goes off of some other kind of people that really tackle this topic, such as, I believe, Dr. Lane in his book, The Still Shavings. He was, I believe, a professor at Indiana University Northwest, which is located in Gary, and he was somebody who really was into this topic as well and wrote his great book, and I believe multiple books on this topic. But if you have any questions, feel free to comment down in the comment box below and go ahead and pick up this book. And thank you for stopping by and watching the video.